One year I made $250,000. The next year I made $6,000. We got sued 78 times.
Going way back when you were 26, making a couple $100,000 a year, flash forward a year, bankrupt.
I got my degree in real estate, and I sold my first house 3 weeks after I turned 18 years old. But I was good at it. I hustled, started from nothing. We ended up with about a little over $1 million net worth, making a couple hundred a year. But I'd borrowed too much money, and I had a lot of short-term notes. The bank got sold to another bank, and a guy in another city looked down and said, "There's a kid, 24 years old, owes us $1 million. This is crazy." And they said, "Let's limit this relationship," which is banker talk for ruin his life. And that started a snowball that took 2.5 years to unfold, and we were bankrupt at the end of it with a brand new baby, a toddler, and a marriage hanging on by a thread.
Hello, I'm Codie Sanchez. Welcome back to the Big Deal Podcast. Today you are in for a treat. If you are sitting alone in your business right now wondering, how do I take it to the next step? If you're struggling financially or unsure how to break through the level that you're currently at, there is literally one guy who for more than 30 years is helping people change their complete financial future. He's arguably the best in the world at it. And he does it in a way where he's going to slap you in the face a little bit and then also make you feel better about it. Maybe even give you a little Nashville cookie in the end. I think you guys know who I'm talking about. I'm talking to the legend Dave Ramsey today. And we've broken down stuff that I've actually never heard him talk about before, like how to grow a business in a way that is repeatable every single time, and like what to do if you are sitting in the dark, head in the hands, unsure of what to do next. So without further ado, let's get to the man himself, Dave Ramsey. Okay, first of all, the book's amazing. Thank you for writing it.
Well, thank you.
And I have all these notes, and I started writing notes for the podcast. And then what quickly happened is it became notes for my employees and myself about all the things I need to do in my business, which was kind of funny.
Wow, that's good. That means it worked.
It did work. It worked too well. So now I have homework in tandem with this podcast. But what I really liked about it is I don't think a lot of people realize how big your business is. I mean, we're sitting on your campus, which is, I believe, $400 million, and you didn't use debt to buy it. Is that right?
Right. We built it. Yeah. It was the first. Yeah, it's probably worth about $600 million right now, but somewhere in that range. But yeah, we built it all, and we bought the first 42 acres of dirt, and then we've added 22 more acres to that. So it's been fun.
It's
fun,
incredible. Right? And I think the part that's the most interesting to me is, going way back to your original story when you were 26, had a couple $1 million in real estate net worth, making a couple $100,000 a year, to flash forward a year, bankrupt, financial struggle,
right,
to $600 million office. I know you've mentioned this before, obviously, but I think there's a lot of people that are more like the former you than the current you. What was that like back then? And what happened?
Well, we were, I got my degree in real estate, and I sold my first house 3 weeks after I turned 18 years old. So I've been in real estate my whole life. Mom and Dad were in the business. And so when I got out of college, I bounced through a couple jobs pretty quick and then started buying and selling houses. And I was doing Flip This House before there was cable TV or Chip and Joanna were born, and so it's a long time ago. This is 1984, right? So, but I was good at it. I'm always good at making a deal, and math is easy for me and that kind of stuff. So I hustled. And so I started from nothing. We ended up with about $4 million worth, a little over $1 million net worth, and making a couple hundred a year at 24 years old in 1984. But I'd borrowed too much money, and I had a lot of short-term notes. The bank got sold to another bank, and a guy in another city looked down and said, "There's a kid, 24 years old, owes us $1 million. This is crazy." And they said, "Let's limit this relationship," which is banker talk for ruin his life. They called them. And that started a snowball, a bad snowball that took 2.5 years to unfold, and we were bankrupt at the end of it with a brand new baby, a toddler, and a marriage hanging on by a thread. So it's like my old pastor used to say, a man with an experience is not at the mercy of a man with an opinion. I've been there, done that, and I don't care what TikTok says. I've done it.
Well, it always makes me chuckle. I remember showing a video to one of my execs, and it was a man on a yacht talking about personal finance. The comments were like, "How could this guy? This is a scam, whatever." And it's Ray Dalio. And I remember sitting there thinking, if they think that he's not the real deal, then who cares what they say about the rest of us on the internet? Because you've been there. It's a fascinating story because I was looking at the numbers of those that go into bankruptcy, those that ever become a millionaire. The number that I saw was less than 10%. So like once you hit bankruptcy, you have an incredibly low likelihood of ever hitting 7 figures in net worth again. And so I think so much of what you talk about here is really cool because you're like, I've been there. But for somebody who's in that position right now today and is struggling, you talk a lot about how it's not necessarily just tactics, although you give a lot of them and I want to talk about it. But is being broke largely emotional too?
It is, and in our case, it was because I ran out of gas. One year I made $250,000. The next year I made $6,000 because I spent the whole year trying to sell everything and do the right thing, in air quotes, and pay the banks what they were owed. And the weird thing that we don't talk about a lot was we took the debt from $3 million down to $328,000 in 2.5 years. We almost made it, but I ran out. I was 28 years old. I had again, little babies, and a wife is scared to death. She thought she married Sir Galahad. Turns out it was Goober. And, I just ran out of emotional gas fighting, and we got sued 78 times. And all of them were right because I owed them money and I didn't pay them. And so we're fighting the lawsuits, the interrogatories, they're capturing any asset they can capture, rightfully so, because we owed them money and didn't pay them. But there weren't any assets left. We'd sold everything. And, but they were coming to take the furniture out of our house, and I was out of gas. I didn't know how to fight it anymore. And but I almost made it. The bankers we talked to later, I went back and paid them all back. It took 10 years, but the bankers that we talked to later all said, we thought you'd file, a year and a half before you did, 2 years before you did. Most people would have, but
Most people do.
but it was the worst thing that ever happened to me and the best thing that ever happened to me because it's not how I wanted anyone else to have to learn something, but the lesson is thorough.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that other people can learn through that experience?
Sure.
Or do some people just have to go through it?
Yeah, you don't have to go through drug addiction to know it's bad. You don't have to go say, cocaine kills people. I know that, and I've never done cocaine, so I don't have to go there. And you don't have to go deeply in debt and lose everything to figure out that debt will choke you to death. Basic common sense observation ought to help most folks get there, but it doesn't. But we did a full CSI on it because we were not only broke, we were broken. So any illusions I had to my academic prowess or intelligence or whatever I thought I was, obviously I wasn't. And so I got the opportunity to start from emotional and spiritual ground zero as well as financial. And when you look at that, you go, okay, what really happened here? Who's really at fault? And you can choose victimhood. You can go, I just spilled hot coffee on myself. Turns out McDonald's serves hot coffee. I think I'll sue them. Or you can say, I'm a klutz and I just spilled some hot coffee. And I should have expected it to be hot since I just bought coffee. And so in my case, I signed up for this debt and it was short-term notes. Well, and then they chose to call them in a short term. Well, who's the idiot? The one that signed it's the idiot. So you got to learn from that and go, okay, what the Bible says the borrower is slave to the lender is real. And I got to experience the shackles.
Yeah. You talk a lot about the Bible and money. Is money biblical? Is your application of how you think about money biblical?
Well, it is for me. I was a baby Christian. I just met God when all that stuff happened. And so I had to make a conscious choice of, okay, the information I'm reading in Scripture, which is it's not spiritual necessarily in nature in the sense that that it has to do with getting into heaven or it has to do with your relationship with God or something, but it's more instructional. Like Proverbs is known, for instance, as the book of wisdom. And whether you're a person of faith or not, you could get something from Proverbs, just like you could get something from any ancient piece. You could read Socrates or Aristotle, and you can get something from that, even if we're not Greek, And so the most of the biblical stuff is kind of if you sat on your grandpa's knee in another generation, we would call it common sense, and it's borrower is slave to the lender, or don't build a tower without first counting the cost, lest you get halfway up and you're unable to finish it, and all who see you begin to mock you. In other words, have a plan, a budget. I mean, we run a $300 million company. Guess what? Every department, every profit center has a budget. we have a plan. We didn't build this building without first having a blueprint. And so that's kind of common sense. It's not really mystical at all. It's not really some kind of spiritual voodoo stuff, but it's just God's love letter to me going, hey, son, here's some wisdom. And if you live this way, you'll have a better life.
Yeah. Common sense, not common practice. Definitely.
Amen. Yeah.
For
Common
sure.
sense is rare.
Yeah.
Nothing's more uncommon, Ben Franklin said. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. But, it's interesting. I always wondered, how, like, you go and you speak to a group of people, and if you say, like, blank is the root of all evil, everybody will fill in money. But you've mentioned in this book and others that it's actually, in the Bible, they say, depending on the way you translate it, that love or desire for money is the root of all evil. So do you think that it is bad or evil to be rich?
No, absolutely not. No, and I did an entire book on it, for the Christian community. As a matter of fact, I'm positive it's not bad or evil to be rich, but it's also not good or positive. You're not better either. Money is amoral; it doesn't have morals. It reflects the morals of those it touches. And so, if someone is greedy and they get money, then the rich are greedy. If someone is generous and they get money, we call them a philanthropist, and they change an entire community and feed hungry kids. No one talks about them when they're mad and being envious or jealous. But the vast majority, and I've studied the wealthy and been among the wealthy just about my whole life, and the vast majority of wealthy people are unbelievably other-centered and generous human beings. There are some jerks. I've met the jerks too. But among poor people, there are jerks. And so it turns out it's not really the money. The money just reveals the character qualities or lack thereof of the person it touches. And so now wealth is not evil in and of itself. The pursuit of it to the degree it negatively affects everything else, sure. That'd be idol worship if you were a Christian, or if you aren't, it would just be dumb, And so, you give up your family in order to, have an IPO. Well, that's short-sighted and not fulfilling. No one's 78 years old on their deathbed, 88 years old on their deathbed, and says, gosh, I wish I'd have done another IPO. Where's my grandbabies?
Yeah. So why do you think we are programmed to think that money is bad? So many of us, I think, are programmed that way. Where did that come from?
It's come from some toxic teaching in the spiritual world. Sometimes some churches have twisted some of these scriptures, and usually they do it in a demographic area where they're ministering to poor people, and then so they run the rich down. I was having dinner with some folks in Australia a couple of years ago, Australians, and we were talking about this, and they said the Australians have quoted Aristotle. They call it tall poppy syndrome. As soon as one poppy sticks its head up above the others, it must be cut. And so we want to tear down those that are ahead of us. That's just jealousy and envy, which the Catholics would call that one of the 7 deadly sins. And so, it comes from, negative human nature, and that we don't want other people to win. But again, oddly enough, those are usually poor people, poor in spirit, not necessarily poor in wallet, but they're usually people who have not attained something. Most successful people, they want to help others.
Yep.
They reach out and you're just starting in a business that I'm already in. I'll show you how, or I'll spend time with you. And you can't mentor everybody that has to be mentored. I don't mean that, but I have to, say, no, young man, I can't run a business here. I can't do that full time. But I'll help anybody I can across the podcast world, or the publishing world, the speaking world. I have talk radio back in the day. All those guys old guys are friends of mine. And so we've been friendly competitors.
Yeah.
But again, most successful people do lift people up. It's usually people that aren't successful that want to pull people down.
Do you think it's too crazy to think that part of the reason why we think money is evil, because when you don't have money, you're actually a lot easier to control? Like, my belief is also, if we keep having like centralization of power throughout all societies, right, until eventually it reverts to the mean. But then if you have a populace that has a bunch of money, which is really just optionality, freedom, pushback, then they're harder to control. And so it seems like over time, they kind of want the few to have it, because then you could control the few easier because they have a lot to lose. But the many, they don't want them to have the pushback. Does that seem too
Well,
conspiracy theorist?
yeah, no, that's good. I mean, there's an influence in some of the anarchist movements of the Communist Manifesto,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really what that comes down to. Is this? If you read and understand and grasp Marx, that's really you just described it. Which is odd because the very propaganda piece of communism is there for the working man, which is absolute hogwash.
Yeah, it doesn't work out.
And just all you got to do is visit operating communist countries today, and I
Mm-hmm.
have, and you have too probably, and it's not working out. It's not working. And the weird thing, in America today, we're the opposite of that. We're very hard to control
Yeah.
because of ease of access into almost any industry, and we're talking about business and starting a business, running a business. It's the easiest it's ever been in America right now to start and run something because you could instantaneously turn on these things and be anywhere, anytime, accessible on video, on audio. You can you can set up a digital store in 20 minutes now,
Yep.
and all of a sudden you're in business. And in the old days, you used to have to, haul stuff in a covered wagon, put some boards up, and build a country store. And it was a lot of process and a lot of risk. And we can launch stuff and iterate it so fast right now. Those of us that are already here and those that want to be here, meaning in business, it's a wonderful time for the little man can't get ahead. Oh, more than at any time in history right now, the little man can get ahead.
I agree. And also, one of the reasons I really liked the book is there are a couple things in there that I think are true overall, which is you had a line that was organizations are never limited by their opportunity, they're limited by their leader, which I have found to be incredibly true in any business that I've ever run. What do you mean by that? And how does making yourself better make you more money in business?
Well, John Maxwell, my friend, has written a bazillion books on leadership, and he and I speak often together. And he says in his best-selling book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, the third law of leadership is the law of the lid, meaning I'm the lid on my organization. When I started this, I was 30 years old, 2.5 years out of bankruptcy, healing psychology. I had PTSD, and I didn't even know what it was. Healing spiritually, healing in my marriage, in my relationships, healing in my finances from that tsunami that took me out in my late 20s. That's the guy that started this place. He could not have run this place today. He didn't have the skills. He was, just a beat up, wounded, passionate dude that wouldn't be denied. And that's all. That's the only thing I had was I just wouldn't quit.
Yeah.
But over the years, I've read and learned and grew and healed and all those things. And, I'm a much better husband than I was when Sharon married me 43 years ago. Just ask her. I'm a much better dad today. My kids see me with my grandkids, and they're like, "Who are you?" And it's like, but we get better, and if you don't get better, don't expect your organization to grow because you're the problem with your organization. I'm the problem with my organization. That's the bad news. The good news is I'm the solution, and so I can read a book, listen to a podcast, go to an event, put some more inputs in, remove some of the lies that I believed about life and about business, put in the real stuff from the people that have really done it, not just ones who have a theory. And then all of a sudden I'm a better leader, and now my organization can grow a little more. And so, I dropped in the other day. We've got 450 some odd folks just on our digital team, and software engineers, platform engineers, and we're building, constantly iterating, writing, and launching, the Every Dollar app and all the other things we do around here that are digital, which is almost everything in the building. And I'm not I'm not a digital generation. I'm a boomer. So I drop in with all these brilliant kids that work for me, and I'm sitting in a room, and they might as well have been speaking German. I have no idea what they're saying. And I had to raise my hand after a minute. I went, "Hey, guys, I can't add value to this room right now because I don't even know what you guys are saying. Would y'all tell me what you just talked about for the last 10 minutes in English so I can understand without dropping all the acronyms?" And once they explained to me, I understood the concepts, but they were just using a completely different vernacular. And unless I get better, and I'm not the only bottleneck in the place, but unless the leadership team here does that and understands the business that we're in, is working with and for people that have grown up with a magic wand in their hand, which I didn't. I had a rotary dial phone on the wall when I was a kid, and so I'm old. But that I got to be relevant, or I can't run the business.
Yeah, it's so true. Well, and one of the other things I loved that you talk about is that, speaking of your employees, that you never want an employee again, that you've had them before, you never want an employee again, but you have 1,100 team members here. What's the difference between the two? And how do you decide if somebody's an employee or a team member?
Well, I think we've all had, if you've ever hired someone, or if you've ever worked anywhere for that matter, you've observed people that were what I call employees. They come late, leave early, steal while they're there, and check Facebook all day. And so not much work, right? And so no productivity, don't care. They're there for what they can take rather than what they can add. And so around our organization, we're a team. We add value. Everybody here adds value. And and if you don't add value, what are you doing here? Why am I paying you? I need to get an ROI on this. And it's not because I'm a jerk. It's just because if I don't get an ROI on you, I can't pay the other guy.
Yep.
So we want to make enough revenue. We can't pay payroll. Hello. So, we want team members. We want people who treat the place like they own it. And when we have an argument, and we have a lot of arguments around here every day, they're wonderful arguments. We have an argument about which play to call to win the Super Bowl, which play to call to get the ball in the end zone. We're not arguing about, some irrelevant thing or some political internal thing, like trying to, we're not sitting around talking about somebody, we're just getting stuff done. It's very utilitarian. And so if you don't want to get stuff done, you don't fit in at Ramsey. I mean, we get stuff done. And you're working with people that are smart, the smartest people you've ever worked with in your life, but they care deeply. That's the difference. You can hire smart people that don't give a crap, and they're useless. They're there, again, for who they can impress with their brilliance rather than let's get something done. Because the people outside these walls is why this place exists, not for the people inside these walls.
Yeah.
We got to love our customer by serving them and bringing them something that helps them change their life. And if you're not doing that here, you're really not a part of this team. And so we don't need employees. If somebody's mailing it in, wants a job, and I've got these many degrees. I had one guy more degrees than a thermometer. He's like, tell me how he was worth. And I said, dude, here this is a small business. Your raise is effective when you are. It's not when you get another degree. I couldn't care less about your certification except it gives you the ability to get something done, and that's all it's good for. And so I don't care about your experience. I don't care what happened at the other place you used to work, except to the extent it helps you get something done here for the good of our customers, and that's who we serve. And if you can't get on board with that, get your butt out of here. Don't let the door hit you in the butt.
Yeah, I loved when you said that profit is the reward for serving the customers that you have.
Yeah.
And man, it's so true. So many people, I think, don't charge their worth, don't get comfortable with profits, don't want to talk about how much revenue they make. But it's so true. If you're not making any money, it's because you're not really helping anybody. Bigger problems you solve, the more money you make.
Exactly. And the more scale you do it. If I print one little book for $2.50 and I sell it for $10, I help one person, and nobody's mad about that.
Yep.
But if I sell, 10 or 15 million of those and I get, $10 or $15 million of that profit, then somebody gets upset. But I help 10 or 15 million people. So, that's how this works. And my friend Rabbi Lapin says that if you help people, they will give you certificates of appreciation with presidents' faces on them.
Such a good line.
Yeah, it is a great line. I wish it was mine, but it's a good line.
You got so many. You need to give a few others out. Like you're the one-liners from here. I went through your X or Twitter or whatever they call it today, and I was like, there's so many. I want to just quote him this whole time. One thing that I do want to double tap on for you is you have some really specific ways you figure out if somebody is going to be a culture fit or not for you guys. And I think we've all been in a job or a career where we hang out with that person who's gossiping all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of fun in the moment. It's like a little adrenaline hit. And then afterwards you feel worse about yourself.
Junk food.
Yeah, it's like, exactly. Gossip is like junk food. So you don't let gossip happen here. How do you, one, stop that in your company? And two, for somebody who doesn't run the company but is in a company, what's the right way to kind of say, I don't want to engage in this behavior? I think people are scared of doing that.
Yeah. In this place, you're one of the owners, and it's one of the things you value. You're not technically an owner, but you're an emotional owner. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things you value working here. And so just like you wouldn't allow something more horrible like sexual harassment to occur, you're not going to look the other way. You're going to say, oh, we don't do that here. And, gossip is much less horrendous than that. But we don't do that here. And if you want to be a we're French, we. If you want to be we, you can't do that here because that's not who we are. And the team will protect the place because it's one of the things that they value when we survey them, because they've never really worked in a place that doesn't do gossip. And it's not like we have to fire a bunch of people. We don't. Occasionally we do, because sometimes people just won't get it, but that's okay. That means they need to be somewhere where they allow that. It's just one of the things we don't do here.
How'd you start that, though?
Hand your negatives up and your positives down. And you're going to have negatives. There's 1,100 opportunities in this building to be pissed off at somebody. So, when something happens, not if something happens, when you're frustrated with so-and-so, when you're frustrated with a situation, your project is not getting attention, you can't get the bandwidth on social media on this thing you're trying to get launched, whatever it is in Ramsey that's frustrating you. And it's like all day long, something frustrating you, because we're trying to get stuff done and there's friction. And so just count on it. Not if you have something that frustrates you, when you have one place to air that. And it's not at the water cooler. It's in your leader's office, or his leader's, or her leader's office, or another leader somewhere in there. Anywhere that's up is okay. You can go talk to somebody in a whole different area and go, look, I just need a place to vent. Tell me about this. And then they can help you. They can help you move through the issue one way or the other. But when you're talking to people that can't do something about the issue, that by definition here is gossip. And usually it's talking about somebody is the problem. And so, and we all know, and yet even at 64 years old, I have trouble remembering that if that person is sitting there gossiping in front of me, then next time when I'm not there, they're talking about me. We all know that, but we act like we're the exception. Like, well, they would never do that. Yeah, so yes, they do. 100% they do. And organizations move at the speed of trust. And when you have a building full of that toxic garbage, you cannot move. It grinds the smartest people to a halt, because now they spend all their time covering their butts, sending out CYA emails instead of productive questions. And so we'll sit down with you and go, look, you had a negative, you talked about it here, 2 or 3 people talked to us, told us what was happening, and if they brought it to leadership that you were doing this, and you can't do that here. And if you do it again, then we're going to help you find another place to work, because we love you and we love this place, and we don't do that here. And just like if they were doing some other behavior that you don't want, we're just not going. If you tolerate it, you get what you tolerate. And so in the early days, I had to really, we had to kind of, but once it became like a thing internally, one of our core values, now it self-polices like 99%. I bet once a year, twice a year, out of 1,100 people, leadership actually has to have a discussion with someone who goes, you can't do that. And maybe we fire one person a year. You would think out of 1,000 freaking people, but no, number one, we tell people that coming in, then they get here, and after 90 days, we review with them in their first 90 days, and they go, I couldn't believe the audio actually matched the video. You really don't do this. And we're like, no, we really don't do this. And we really don't borrow money, and we really live on a budget, and we really live on less than we make, and we really don't have credit cards. We really do the stuff we teach. We're not freaking hypocrites. And if you want to be a we, this is what we do. And so, it's an interesting thing culturally to observe that when people actually believe it's going to happen, they believe there's consequences and accountability, they will self-enforce.
Yeah, it's so good. Can you tell the story about the first time that you had to fire somebody sort of for this in the company? And it's such a good story. And the salesperson.
Yeah, man, one of my top salespeople. She was incredible. She was selling so much. And we were tiny. There was only just a handful of us, maybe less than 50 of us. But there was a cloud. You ever walk into a place and in your spirit you sense there's something wrong? It's like almost like something runs down your shoulder. It was just like this cloud. We were doing good. The numbers were good. The show was growing. The book sales were. Everything seemed to be moving. But it was just like this. And I couldn't figure it out. So we had a little staff meeting. We have a staff meeting every Monday morning, still. And I guess there are probably 30 people or something like that. And I had an appointment right after, and I ran out to my car. And when I got out the car, I forgot my stupid keys. I came back in to get my car keys. And when I walked back in, this person was having the second meeting. And we've all experienced the second meeting where someone stands up and says what they thought everybody was thinking when the leader was saying otherwise. So Anyway, she was just trashing me, how dumb I was, and it's one of the companies stayed open under my leadership, and da 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 da. And her back was to me, and she didn't hear me come in through the door because it was one of those silent closed door things. And the other people are looking at me, and they're like, you know, and I just stood there and listened to her for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, which is an eternity to hear somebody trash you in person that you're paying. You know, it's just like, yeah. And so finally, I guess something happened, and the hair stood up on the back of her neck. She turned around and looked at me. She goes, oh, blank, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's probably accurate. And so she goes, well, and she starts trying to, and I'm like, hey, listen, both of us are not dumb. You're dumb if you stay here and work for a guy as bad as the guy you just described, and I'd be dumb if I kept somebody and paid them money that feels that way about me. That'd be dumb too. So we're pretty much done. Come on in here, and I'll sit down with you. I'll cancel my other appointment, and we'll figure out your exit paperwork. And she's like, no. The worst part was when I got home and I told Sharon. She's like, I told you not to hire me.
I get that from kids too. They're always right too, aren't they?
I know, it's 100%. So
I know.
we actually now, that's one of the reasons we also do spousal interviews.
God, I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, that's another thing. And it just, the spouses go on the final interview, both the person being hired and the leader leading them, hiring them, because the spouses can smell a rat a mile away.
Yeah.
And I've had people being interviewed, and the spouse looks at him or her and goes, you don't want to work there, right in front of us. And I'm like, good. That's the time to figure it out.
Yeah.
Before we go through all the onboarding, before we go through all this, we got the expense of recruiting in at that point, but I don't have all the other stuff. That's the time to figure it out. And then we've had people we go home. My wife would say something like, I don't know, it just something feels bad. And that's pretty vague. But if my wife says that, we don't hire them. Yeah. And that she's probably said it 3 times in 30 years. She doesn't play that card. She's scared of that power. She doesn't want to
overuse it. Yeah.
She does. But if she has that feeling, I want her to say it. I want her to say, because every time she has that feeling, somebody's doing cocaine or somebody's doing something. You know, something's going on, and I'm just like a Labrador Retriever. I just think everybody's great, and I'll just hire everybody. And she's like, no, I smell evil there. There's something happening. I'm like, okay, let's avoid that one. And then we always find out later that person that we avoided, you know, God protected us.
Yeah. You know, my husband always says it's either an F yes or it's a no with hiring.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Every time I go against that, I regret it later.
Exactly.
Every time.
Yeah,
but I've never thought about...
You're trying to get the work done. I'm trying to get the thing filled. And so I tend to just I kind of had that, push that to the back. I know better. Yeah, but the resume's good. Yeah, but I know, but the way he treated his wife at dinner, nobody would hire that guy. But I'm going to, and I'll make it okay. It's like missionary dating. It's like dating somebody and you're going to change them. Oh crud! No, just date somebody of quality. Hello.
Yeah, it's true.
It's just I've done it. Oh, I've done it wrong so much.
Yeah. But you do have really good ways to go about it. I thought the spousal interview was the most. I've never heard of that before. I thought it was really smart. And also, I think if somebody else can put up with them for a long period of time, it's also a great sign. Mm-hmm. I'm like, this other person who seems reasonable thinks you're good enough to stay with for a decade plus. Okay, I like that.
Some of our best team members, when we sit down at the final interview with the 4 of us go out to dinner, you're more impressed with their spouse than you are them. And you go, well, if you can pull that off, then you're probably going to make her. Yeah. If you can attract her, you can attract him, then, that's good.
And keep them. Yeah. I really liked that. I also liked how you think about a screening process that is sort of the same every single time. What else do you think makes it possible to hire A players every time or all the time or often? How do you screen people to find the best people?
We just remember the pain of when we didn't. Every time I let Crazy in the door, because Crazy will screw up the building, man. Oh my God, he just there's not enough drugs on the planet to handle some of these people, man. So
it's just so true.
And
every business owner feels that way, don't they?
Yeah. But every time I find the door they used, we put a lock on that door. So all I got to do is go. The last time I ignored this, it just about killed me. The last time I put loyalty ahead of integrity, it just about killed me. The last time I thought, well, I knew this guy back, 20 years ago. Well, yeah, but every time I ignore these things that are tickling at the back of my spirit and my, in my brain, then it kills me. So yeah, And so we try to say, okay, we're going to do different things, checks and balances to do that, and we're going to measure them, and we want more than one person to look at them, and we're going to take time. And every time we say, oh, we just got to get them in here, and we shortcut. Every time it screws it up. Take your time and do it right, or you get to do it over.
Yeah.
It's the old mom thing. It's like, anything worth doing is worth doing right the first time. Or you get to do it over.
It's true.
And then not only then, but you got all the lost productivity of all the humans that have to deal with that person that came in that shouldn't have been here.
Yeah.
And it's just and the good news is these days there's hardly any of them. They're very, very. They know what they're getting when they come in here, and if they want to sign up for this and pull off our interview process, they're freaking pathological if they got through it. If they're nuts, because we're going to spend enough time with them, different settings, calm, discussing, asking questions, lots of questions. Let them ask anything they want to ask.
Yeah.
We don't need them. We just need them.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's not, we don't emotionally need you to be here, but we'd love to have your help.
You know what's interesting? I'm curious. Have you ever fired somebody that you regretted firing? Or do you usually wait too long to fire?
I have. I promised myself when we opened that because in my 20s I struggled with a temper, with anger, and it's been part of my spiritual walk to no longer struggle with that, and I don't struggle with it today. But I promised myself I would never fire someone while I was angry, and I haven't. I've managed to pull that off. I did wait 2 days to calm down before I fired a person that had a major thing they had done, and I was definitely angry. But I just said, I'm not even going to look at them. I'm not going to deal with it. I'm not going to be in the same room with them until I get my head straight.
Yep.
And then I walk in, and then I go. Then I can be kind, but also, do what's necessary, because this person cannot be a part of our organization and do those kinds of things. It's not optional. And so, but yeah, I mean, you get that. But again, with the 4 or 5 times I could say that has happened.
Yeah.
Then I can look back and go, every one of those were because I kept them too long.
Yeah.
Because I ignored the signs, and again, my loyalty to the person. Well, they've been here 10 years. I owe them. They poured their life out for this place. I'm gonna give them one. And you end up becoming an enabler if you're not really careful as a leader. And I struggle with that, but it's never gone on so long that it destroyed the company or something like that. But man, that's the pain point for me. You can feel it just talking about it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I found every owner I've ever talked to has the same thing, which is we usually wait too long, even when we know it's not right.
Yep.
And I ask the question all the time because I need to remind myself. I always keep people too long too. And I think it's a little bit of like a God complex too. I'm like, no, I could fix them. I could help them. I don't want to be mean. And I have to remind myself that it's actually doing them a huge disservice because they could be amazing somewhere else.
Exactly.
It's just not a good fit for me.
Exactly.
And so you've been at this longer, so it's
right.
nice to hear you say
it's exactly the same thing. You're exactly on it, and it is a bit of a God complex, but it's also just a kindness thing. And I'm a Southern guy, and so like we're specialists at passive aggressive. So we're like bless your heart, and that can mean slit your throat, or it could mean bless your heart. And so it's but we were taught that it's not nice to have conflict.
Yeah.
And the truth is, the thing I picked up about 20 years ago, and I say it all the time, and our leadership is indoctrinated with this, is to be unclear is to be unkind. And so when I sit with you 3 times and tell you that you're not cutting it at this work is not, how can we help you to get you there? Because we're not going to continue like that. When I tell you that 3 times, there's probably not going to be a 4th, and we're going to talk about that the second time. Is there's not going to be a 4th. Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to have a discussion here because I'm not going to sanction incompetence. It's not an option. As much as I love you, and as much as I love hanging out with you and doing stuff, that doesn't matter. You still can't be here because we got to get our work done. Guess what? If I suck on this microphone, people don't listen. Hello, I get fired. So that's how it works.
Yeah. I want to actually talk a little bit about entrepreneurs. I think it's a super lonely journey. This book is for builders in particular and owners. And one of my favorite parts is your categorization of where somebody is at in business. Because I think all of us have felt in business numerous times, hey, my business is struggling. I'm not making any money. Hey, we're making a ton of money, but it's moving so fast, I don't know what to do next. And you kind of categorize entrepreneurs into a few different types, 5 levels: treadmill operator, pathfinder, trailblazer, peak performer, legacy builder.
The 5 stages. Yeah.
The 5 stages. What are these and why do they matter as an entrepreneur?
Well, most of us that are entrepreneurs, oddly enough, if you have dyslexia, you are more likely to be an entrepreneur than anything else. If you have ADHD or ADD, confirmed or unconfirmed, Dave talks too much. He's hyper. Was on my report card every single year. Unconfirmed, but probably, and so medically unconfirmed. But so you're probably in those categories, because what happens to those of us that have those different things is we live our life doing workarounds. And that is the ultimate definition of an entrepreneur. You're finding a problem and solving it. You're doing a workaround for somebody that doesn't even think that way, doesn't even know they have a problem, and you're going and solving it for them. And that turns into a product, a service that becomes very profitable and very much of a blessing to the customer, as we talked about earlier. So we find a high degree of those folks, and we start as a treadmill operator. We start with, I'm going to go get this thing done. And you get up on a treadmill and you start running, and you get home at night and you're exhausted. And you go, what'd you do today, honey? I have no idea, but I worked my butt off. And but some stuff moved around. I know that. And it's very chaotic, and it's very dependent on you. And that's the problem. It's not sustainable. You don't yet own a business at the treadmill stage. You own your job. Yeah. Because if you don't show up, you don't make any money. You don't show up, the customer doesn't get anything because nothing's produced, because you're the producer, and you're the producer of revenue and the producer of the goods and services. And so that's how it started here. That's where it starts with most people. And then you begin to go, okay, this isn't going to work. I'm going to die of burnout. I may die happy because I don't work for somebody else, but I'm going to die of burnout. I got to get some other people helping me, and that's called delegation. And you begin this dreaded hiring process we were just talking about, and you learn, oh, this is hard. Hiring and firing is hard, but it's harder. It's not as hard as working by myself and trying to do everything myself. So, we start adding folks and doing time management and working on the right things, working smart, not hard. Get a little bit of work-life balance. All of a sudden, you can actually be home before 10 at night. You can actually not have to panic about payroll every Friday because you've actually get some cash reserves. We start putting some things like that. Now we're starting to run a business, and that moves us into that Pathfinder stage. And from there, you start doing some planning, and you actually think past Friday. And that's the stage I learned the phrase strategic thought. I'm totally tactical. I get it done right now, and we'll deal with it later. But no, so I was just constantly running through the labyrinth trying to figure out where the end of the bushes were. And some guy standing up above goes, if you turn left, you get out of there. And so that's strategic thought. You got to get above the problem and give it the 30,000-foot view. And so I always laugh and say, I got to the point I finally started hiring people that had MBAs. I don't have an MBA. And but I've got great admiration for that level of business education. And 100% of the MBAs I've ever hired, I guess it's indoctrinated into every program, are wonderful strategic thinkers. They are taught to get above the problem. And I always laugh and go, okay, the MBAs taught me how to get above the problem. I taught them how to work. Because when in doubt, I work my butt off. So that's the trailblazer stage. And then that stuff starts to work, and you start to do something you mentioned earlier, and you go, I'm going to put some systems and processes in place so humans don't have to do everything by paper. We don't have to kill so many trees, and this thing is analog as it can be. This P&L ought to automatically spit out. It shouldn't be like sharpen a pencil. We ought to start putting these systems. And when you do that, added with the strategic thought, and you get the second layer of leadership. Your first layer of leadership is just you got other people leading. Now you're leading people that lead people that lead people. Now you're moving into Pathfinder. Pathfinder is a sweet spot. Money is coming and you're bailing it. You're bailing money. You're making money. You're good at what you do. it's a well-oiled machine, we always say around here. And that's a fun time. It seems like Midas touch. Everything you touch turns to gold.
Yep.
The danger is you start to believe your own press clippings and you don't iterate fast enough. You don't kill it before it needs to die. And so we break stuff before it needs broken around here so we don't get stuck there. Because you can try to, you can be Kodak and say, I don't, film is the way it's always going to be. Digital cameras are never going to happen. And then all of a sudden you're gone. You're a memory. You can be Blockbuster and be a memory if you stay in the Pathfinder stage and don't constantly iterate and break it before it's broken, and new products and learn skills you didn't have, and bring in leadership that's smarter than you constantly, and figuring things out, blowing your mind with how smart they are, and that keeps Pathfinder vibrant. And then you've got to realize that you're immortal and you're not going to outlive this thing called life. And I did that at 48, 16 years ago. We hit the legacy builder stage, and we started working on succession plan then. How does this brand survive? How does this leadership team survive? I don't want to work my whole life and build something and then it just evaporate because I do. Right. That's kind of dumb, and especially for a guy that teaches financial responsibility. And so, we started working on it at that point. The Ramsey personalities were born, the early iterations of them. The leadership team has always been good and strong, so that was fairly easy handoff at my death or retirement. The ownership, the next generation has got to be able to have the wisdom and the character to carry the thing. The Ramsey kids, as we call them, were younger at that point. They're all old people now. They're all in their 30s and 40s, but and they're very capable. So we got ownership dialed in, we got leadership dialed in, we got a brand transfer lined up where you don't have to have me on the microphone to survive. You don't have to have me doing a book to survive. And so today, our survivability index, which is our accounting metric, says that 96% of the revenue will survive me if I die today. Next year, 96% would survive me.
How do you measure that? Do you have do you have an algorithm?
Yeah, we run through all the P&Ls. We ask all the leaders to look at their product lines and give us a case study as to why they believe what they believe, and then what would happen. For instance, we've got one that's probably 99%. Our high school curriculum is it's a $25 million a year business, and people buying our high school curriculum to teach it in high schools. It's almost zero dependent on me. I'm not even in it. And so it's got Ramsey on the outside, but Daniel Ramsey's my son. So it survives because they don't care if I'm here. When the thing was 100% me on talk radio, and the revenue from talk radio that year was $35 million, and I die, that'll be a Rush Limbaugh event. Yeah. It'll evaporate. That revenue will evaporate. That affiliate network will evaporate, which is what's happened with that one. Largely, not completely, but largely, because there was no succession planning. And so, and Rush is a friend of mine. It's just sad because he was Elvis of talk radio. Yeah. But that network is not, it's probably a little more than 10% of what it was before he died. So it's, the actual show itself, I'm saying, but not the company. The company's iHeart, so they're fine. But anyway, it's not to run them down. It's just that's what happens if you don't have a brand transfer in our world, the podcast world.
Well, what's interesting is that every business should have this ability for the owner to, quote unquote, die in some way, shape, or form, move on, get a new project, do a new revenue line, and it should still survive theoretically. But a lot of businesses obviously don't have that. And I think this type of business, which is you described it as like a content or media business, has typically the lowest survivability because it's a personality. Exactly. So it's actually a really interesting way to learn from the business that would typically have the lowest survivability in order for any business to increase its survivability. Because at the end of the day, Apple, of course, it misses Steve Jobs and his brilliance, but not really important at all to the survivability if we just look at it mathematically based on its revenue. I had never thought about that before, because most media companies, one, are bad business models, right? They have lots of volatility, third-party ad sponsors, no proprietary products, and huge key man risk. And so you basically diversified all of that away, which is interesting.
And when you're diversifying, it has to be quality. So when the Ramsey personalities are sitting doing the Ramsey show, which was originally the Dave Ramsey show, now it's called the Ramsey show. Yeah. And when they're sitting and doing it, I took several weeks off, and Sharon and I were out of the country. And when I came back, the ratings were up. It's distressing. Makes me mad. I don't feel as important.
Well, it's interesting too, because I think that's probably a reason why egoically a lot of us don't put these things in place,
Oh,
because
it
it kind of
hurts.
feels good to be.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right?
Well, and even with a small business that I talked to a guy the other day. One of our people we're coaching in Entree Leadership. He's at one of our events. Owns a heat and air company, and he's like, he's the only one that can do it. And I'm like, you're not Jesus. That job's taken. The Messiah is gone. You're not him. You're the only guy can run a heat and air company. You've got to be kidding me. What kind of self-importance is this? I can tell you this. The biggest, when we watch these succession plans, Gen 1 to Gen 2, the founder
Yep.
turning it over is the hardest succession plan emotionally, because the founder is always a hard head. We're always stubborn. We're always self-important. We're always have that Messiah complex. We always have that. And it can be in any business. Media is particularly bad because we dare to step on a stage or in front of a microphone, which requires another level of ego. But you really got to fight against that and start to realize, okay, it's the message that's important. It's the method that's important. And someone else can do it. And if you don't believe me, watch when someone else does.
Yeah. It's a great point. Like one of our portfolio company CEOs, he's an incredible operator. He's run this business really well for a long time. But to get to the next level, you can't do the same thing to get to 9 figures as you did to get to low level 8.
Exactly.
It's just not going to do it.
Right.
And so what's fascinating is he surrounded himself kind of with this like band of merry fools. And they were okay for the level he was at before, but they are actually detrimental for the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually gave him this book because my point was, like, you have felt good and benefited from the fact that you were the head of the table and everybody listened to you. And in your next venture, if you are the person everybody's listening to and they aren't smarter than you're never going to make it.
Yeah. You got to walk into that room of youngsters and not know what they're saying.
Right.
If you're not that guy, then you're going to die. You're going to get taken out. The marketplace will shear your head from your shoulders.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's brutal out there.
Yeah. You really got to get over your own BS.
Yeah.
Which is hard.
And again, but it takes a level of that to start something. The people that don't have that oomph, that
Right.
it factor, that I'm going to throw my shoulders back and show the world, if you're just a timid little mouse, you're not going to start anything. So you got to go bust into it.
Yeah.
You got to knock stuff down. You got to create friction and piss some people off. I mean, you got to go do that. But once you get to doing that, you got to realize, okay, the best way to keep doing this is have people smarter and even better and more energetic than me around me.
Yeah. And kind of get excited by that. Like, look who I attracted. We just hired a new president for my company, and he's gonna chuckle that I'm talking to him about this. But he came from this other company, Mr. Beast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so big, huge YouTube company. And so I'm like, Mark, we got to do a press release to show that you came on board. He's like, I don't need that. I'm like, no, it's for me. I'm like, I'm really excited that I attracted you to the business, because this means that you're a signal to the marketplace that we hire great people that are better and smarter than me.
Well, and that we're coming.
Yeah.
Look out, we're coming. Here we come.
Yeah, that's right.
And notify the competitors.
Exactly. I shouldn't do that, but yes, you're right. Yes, you're right. What would you say to a young builder, that crazy type of human that wants to do the psychopathic work of building a company? What would you tell them to do? Where should a young builder start today?
Well, I mean, the first thing and I just talked to our team about it this morning in a staff meeting, reminding them yet again, one of our core values here is, if you help enough people, you don't have to worry about money. So too many times when we start something, we are enamored with our own idea, our own ability, and the idea is the thing rather than the customer. Mm. And what I want to do is I want the person that is not inside the building to be blessed, to be changed, to be served, to have their mind blown. The people inside the building all get their mind blown. Not so much. Not so much. That doesn't do anything. What happens is when all those people out there all over the world, I get the opportunity to help one of them with their budget. I get the opportunity to help one of them with their marriage. I get to help one of them with their spiritual walk. I get to help one of them with their small business. When they, and so we don't build anything for us. We build everything for them. And when you first start, that's not natural. That's paradoxical, because you're kind of into what you're doing, and you're like, oh, I'm kind of good at this, and this is kind of cool. And it was for me anyway. And so mean, I did the first cassette tapes or VHS tapes, I was like, wow, look at that guy. He's funny and he's good. And it kind of started coming to me, no one cares except
true.
your mama and your wife.
And they also
and
don't.
they don't care that much. So, it's like, but I think that's a thing. Serve. And if you can find a way to make other people's life better and let them be the hero in the story, as my friend Donald Miller says. Don't you have to be the hero? You can be the guide, and that kind of stuff. It just makes you have a good quality life, and you've got a good philosophical, spiritual underpinning to your business. Then that you can, okay, we're about service. And when you interact with an organization, a business that is about themselves, you feel the take rather than the give. And when you interact with a company that is all about service, you come away with your mind blown because they're fairly rare.
That's such a good point. Yeah, wasn't it Don Miller that talked about the fact that you think that you're Skywalker as the business owner, but you're actually Yoda? I need to remember that often.
Yeah.
And I love that visual. I love the visual because, one, you're like, you're not the sexy, young hero of the story. You're like the wrinkly, green, old, kind of in the background. And then also that everybody thinks you're the hero in the story. So
since they think they're the hero, if you put yourself in the hero seat, they don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, it's true.
But if you'll show them how to live their life and be the hero in their life, then that's the story brand is the book that Donald did, and the talk. He's a wonderful communicator, and but that idea of a story arc as a marketing plan, and the idea that, okay, I'm going to position myself. And we did that. He mentions it in the book. We do that with the debt-free scream.
Yeah.
And the people get to be the hero, and they scream, I'm debt-free, on that stage right out there. And that's not like, I love Dave. It's like, I'm debt-free. I'm the hero. Thank you, Dave and Ramsey, for showing me how to be the hero, to change my life. And so anytime our team is instructed, anytime someone comes up and says, you changed my life, they always say, oh, no, we showed you how.
Yeah, it's so incredible, and you can notice it kind of everywhere in the headquarters. It's one of my favorite things whenever I get to come to a company's headquarters, because I feel like you can almost immediately tell what the soul of a company is by the place that they choose to build. It's your physical manifestation of who you are and who you think your company is. And so, when I came, there's only one other company that I've seen that's as intentional as yours, which is my friend Andy Frisella's at First Form. Different brand, but the truck you have with the books that you used to sell out of the back of it, then the cookies that you give people to sit in front, and how you built a studio thinking that they might watch it for free. Then the fact that you have a wall with everywhere somebody signed if they've become debt free, and also somewhere they can take a picture. It's like the headquarter is for the company, but it's also for the individual and the person. And I think those little reminders, it goes back to your point of like, well, once you set it and you enforce it a few times, it becomes self-enforcing. And it's even in the way that you design everything here. And so I didn't realize that when I was a first-time founder, and I'm learning it more and more the more businesses we build.
Well, this is the fourth building, so I didn't realize it early either.
Yeah, makes me feel better.
We've gotten better.
Yeah, but how cool that, as a builder, you can do that same thing. So I think it's really interesting. I just have a few questions I want to summarize with. My dad has this line that I always go back to about being a builder, which is like, you're not in the game unless you've sat in the dark, head in the hands, completely unsure of what to do next. And if you have, then you're in the game. Then you've played. What would you tell somebody that is in their business right now and they are struggling, they're in the pain cave, and they don't know how to get out?
The only thing that we've done, and there's nothing, I tell entrepreneurs this all the time because I deal with them like you do that are there. They're in that. Anytime I'm talking to an audience of 1,000 people, a certain number of them are in a pain cave, right? Is first do a gut check and say, why am I in this business? Am I in it just to make money? You may be done. Because the pain cave may be telling you it's time to quit because you suck and, it's not going to make you money. Your goal was to make money. Your only goal was to make money. I'm not against making money, don't misunderstand. But if that's your only thing, money's great. Get you some, but if you eat enough lobster, it tastes like soap. So it's just, there's only so much you can do with money. So, but if you're not in it just for money you're the second category. And you want to make some money. You want to bless your family. You want to do those things. But the reason you're in the business is because something's burning inside of you. You can't not do it. You have to do this. If that's you and you're in there with your face in your hands, welcome to the club. You're in the game. Take the next step. Take the next step. Don't sit. If you're in the pain cave, it's time to stand up and step out and step out. Take another step, take another step. And pretty soon you'll see light and you can work your way out of the cave. There'll be a little light up there, a pin light, and then it'll get bigger and then it'll get bigger. And, and I guess the third piece, other than take the next right step and keep taking the next right step, the second piece of advice would be on that is, when you do get into the light, you're going to laugh when you look back about what you thought was going to kill you, how small it is. You're going to laugh at what a drama queen you really are. And I look back at some of the stuff that I thought, oh God, this is the end. And I look back and I'm going, that was the end? You were a complete wuss. It was like, no way.
True.
But you don't get that perspective until you get out into the light. When you're in it, it feels like the world is coming to an end, that's the end. That's, the last thing. No, there's one more. And if you walk your way out and you look back, it's, when I look back at stuff 25 or 30 years ago, and I'm thinking that almost took it. I thought that was going to take us out. I thought we weren't going to make it. It's humorous to me how stupid I was that I thought, it's that big now, but time gives you that perspective. I thought it was the end of I thought it was a 10-story building.
It's so true. I keep this meme on my phone that's, it's like a picture of it's like a drawing, but of a man that just looks like he's going through it. And he's staring up at God and he's like, why have you presented me the most horrible challenge yet? And you see Jesus look down at him and he goes, man, just go take a walk outside and get some vitamin D and get off your phone. And I giggle every time I look at it.
Yeah,
because the solution is, like you said, it's just one step in front of the other. And also realizing that entropy is physics, which just means problems get worse and worse and worse, but we become more capable of fixing them.
Yeah.
And so it's a great reminder. And also, man, thank God there's problems. Otherwise we'd make no money. Because that's the only way we get paid, right?
Easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. So this next book will be one of now the next series of 30 million books you'll have sold.
I hope. Your lips to God's ears.
Exactly. When you put this in the next gen's hands, what's like the one thing, if they could take one thing out of this book, as you can tell, I have a ridiculous amount of notes in this thing, but if you had to pick one, what would you hope somebody takes out of this?
We have learned around here, and it's true of this book and this material, that there is great hope in a clear path. That if I can see that this is where it's going, then I can keep my energy level up. When you can't see where it's going, we experience burnout. When you can see where it's going, it's only fatigue. And so I can see where it's going. I can move from treadmill to Pathfinder. I can use these 6 drivers in business that we talk about in the book. And these are systems and paths that help me make the next thing. And it's by a guide, a Yoda that's trustworthy, because not only have I been there, done that, but we've also been there, done that with 10,000 businesses. So this is not think tank theory. This is not academia. This is actually people freaking running businesses, and it probably won't work if you're running a $700 billion business or something. It wouldn't work for Apple. That's not what it's written for. It's written for the veterinarian, for the heating and air guy, for the young podcaster, for the whatever, somebody that's starting and or is in the early stages, or they've been running it for 10 years and they just feel stuck. Yep. And they don't know, but, well, you're supposed to be there now. And somebody needs to tell you that and show you why, and then show you what the next things are to level up. And so the clear path gives hope.
I love that. Well, I think one of my richest friends told me that if you can do one thing in life, it's if you can buy somebody else's 10,000 hours, you should. And so This is a pretty cheap price tag. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be with you. Great job.
Same. By the way, you guys, little sneak peek. We are sitting in Ramsey Solutions headquarters in Nashville, Tennessee. This place is wild. It's somewhere between 400 and 600 million dollars, multiple buildings, this huge campus that they built with $0 in debt. And now, if you've ever built a business or a building, you know how ridiculous that is. What's super interesting about this headquarters, too, is that it's one of the most intentional headquarters I've ever seen. All around me are these little notes, these little messages to all of you, to the people out in the audience who are actually making change in their lives by becoming financially free. And so I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of this. Go to Instagram. You can check out the stories of the headquarters. I think you'll see what I see too, which is don't despise humble beginnings. Because man, if you can start out where he did and get to where he is today, I think we'd all be pretty happy with that.